and people keep saying, well, the bubble's going to pop, the bubble's going to pop, the bubble's going to pop. A, would the bubble ever, in theory, pop, or are we going to see more of a slow deflation? And B, if the bubble does pop, is that something that people should actually be actively excited for if they're trying to get into the market, or would there be other negative ramifications when it comes to the future of housing?
We are going to see more of a slow deflation, which started, 3.5 years ago. We're in the midst of it now, right? People are still kind of denying that there's a housing crash, but this is kind of the largest and fastest decline of real home values on record, right? Like it already is. So if that's not a crash, then I don't know what's a crash, right? I do think it's a positive thing in the long term in terms of returning to a more sane market and a market that's based more on like an overall economy that's based more on productivity than it is on just betting on inflating asset values. I think that's been a really big problem for us for a long time, is that more and more of the economy has been focused around just increasing real estate value, right? Like more and more investment dollars were taken up by residential construction. People's spending was very, very tied to their perception of their own wealth because of their increasing home value. People, economists call that the wealth effect.
We have an
And now the
invested
prices are
interest in
coming back
propping up home
down.
prices because we don't want to lose our assets.
Yeah, and so what they're calling it now is the inverse wealth effect, and I'll let you decide what you think the inverse of wealth is. But so I think in the long term, yeah, it's not going to be this big pop where everybody's going to be able to pile into the market, right? You still have all the same people with the same amount of money, the same jobs, and the same stock of housing, right? So all that's changing in that sense is like monetary stuff, other than a lot of new rental stock coming to market. I think if there is one segment that you can say has popped, it's like the condo market in Toronto and Vancouver, where there was a lot of product that was being built specifically for investors, which they call, micro condos or dog crate condos, if you want a more pejorative term. But they were targeted at investors to be a relatively low capital way to get into property investing. And they weren't so much targeted at the end users, which is where the actual value of a
Housing
home
is
comes
created.
into
Yeah,
play,
exactly.
right? Somebody gets to live in it. And so a lot of people were just like putting a deposit down on these and then flipping the assignment without ever taking possession, right? Which is a completely unproductive source of profit in the economy, right? They were just soaking up money from the rest of the market when prices were going up and up and up. And now there's a lot of people who's like their value has gone down since they put the deposit down, and now they can't close on the condo, so they're in like a distressed sale situation, or it's getting pushed onto the rental market. So that's the market segment that is really struggling the most now.